time and once in a while has a real hard opening. Who has like a really nice snivel and then the canopy inflates and then the canopy goes off heading? A bit more, I guess. There we go. We come to that as well. Because it's a really easy fix. Who was taught that rolling your tail gives you a soft opening? Come to that. Cool. So let's get started. I brought a Sabre 2150, a very special one, the 20,000 ever made. I brought it because it's a very new canopy, so at least otherwise you get like, oh, it's so easy to bag it with an old canopy. I took a nice and slippery one. I just start off with a regular pack job, nothing too special. Of course, when you start packing, always start symmetrical, then at least you give your canopy a chance to open on heading. Cool, a little trick here. I see a lot of people when they pack, they flake the nose and then they give it a little shake to kind of line things up neatly inside. Well, if you let go of your A and B lines and just hold your C and D lines or hold nothing at all, now if you give the shake, you kind of line up the whole canopy at once. So all the cells are pretty much already lined up, so it saves you a lot of work when you try to kind of sort things out inside. Cool. My philosophy when it comes to packing is the more the fabric is already in place where it needs to be on opening, the more smooth your opening will be. I see a lot of people, they have a very nice pack job and then they start folding stuff and whatever. But for me it doesn't make sense if this is my stabilizer, right? So after inflation it needs to be all the way out there. So for me it doesn't make sense to fold it all the way to the other side because then it just needs to move around before it can inflate. Cool. So this is just like a normal regular pack job. We're going to pay some attention to the slider because the slider is your only device which controls the opening. When I look around at the different drop zones and events I see a lot of people when they quarter the slider that the left and right side people pull the slider up and make it nice and even with the stabilizer. Who does that? It's alright if you do it. I mean, we're going to talk a little bit about it, but it's quite a common thing to see. Please stop doing it. Cool. What happens if you take the left and right side and if you pull it up and you make it kind of nice and equal with your stabilizer? What actually happens is you lift the center of the slider out of the canopy, which creates a really small channel of air here. And once in a while, the air will find that channel and actually pushes your slider down really fast. So creates that could be one of the reasons that you have a very hard opening once in a while. So when you quarter the slider, put the slider, the center of the slider all the way down in the canopy to minimize the chance that there's a small hole created, which can give you a hard opening.
Sorry, Hans, I didn't get what you said about the channel of air. I know about the result from this, but can you explain?
Cool. So if you lift these sides up, if you look at the center of my slider, if you lift it up, you see I'm lifting the center of the slider out of the fabric here. So there will be a small channel of air here, and when you're unlucky, air will find that channel and brings your slider down really fast. Cool. Well, now we come to my favorite bit. And that's about rolling the tail or actually not rolling the tail. The only reason we wrap the tail around the canopy is to be able to contain the fabric, to handle the fabric so we can, get the air out and get the canopy in the bag. A lot of people tend to roll the tail because that makes that bagging process a little bit easier because it's already a nice and tight package and then when you squeeze the air out, the fabric stays more in place. But it really affects your opening a lot. So, what we do is we only take the bottom bit of the slider. Most of the time I just take it where the seam is here, the horizontal seam. I take them together and I only do like one roll just to hold the fabric together and then I put the canopy down. Oh, oh my God! Oh my God! Cool. Well, there's a reason for it. So this is the canopy, how we put it in the bag, right? Obviously we make it a little bit smaller, we get the air out, but this is the shape of the canopy, how it gets into the bag. So this is obviously also the shape of the canopy, how it comes out of the bag. I call it the cone shape because it kind of looks like an ice cream cone, right? Well, this is an uncontrolled stage of the opening. So when the canopy is in that cone shape, it can do anything above your head which is out of your control. So you can imagine if you roll the tail a lot, the canopy stays in the cone shape a little bit longer. It starts kind of weaving above your head. It had that momentum in, the tail clears. So now we have the nice ball of fabric. We can see the slider, but that momentum is in the canopy. Canopy inflates and boom, there we go, off heading. This is the major reason of off-heading openings. Also, some people tend to stuff the nose all the way into the canopy. Don't do that. Just leave the nose in front of you. Only wrap the tail around. One or two little loose rolls to make sure now. Because if I lift up the canopy now, my tail is already gone. It's open here, right? So the moment the canopy comes out of the bag, that tail is gone, and the very first thing the air will find is the slider, and the slider is the only device which controls your opening. Also, actually rolling the tail too much, and especially the top bit of the tail, not only causes off-heading openings, but it increases the chance of a hard opening. So where you were taught like, oh, you have to roll the tail a lot because you get a soft opening, actually you increase the chance of hard opening. Because what happens, the canopy comes out of the bag in the cone shape. It's very, very tightly rolled. So now, when it stays in the cone shape, your slider can actually slide down a little bit from the slider stops. Then the tail clears, and suddenly we've got that channel of air here where the slider grommets are from of the slider stops. So we got that channel of air here, which is really easy for the air to find, and boom, smashing my slider down. So instead of giving you that softer opening which was taught, it increases the chance of a hard opening. And this is not only for this canopy, the way of packing you can apply to any canopy, whether you pack a tandem or you pack the smallest Valkyrie and everything in between. It works this way. Any questions so far?
Yes, I always been told that when you roll the tail, it holds your slider up. When you squeeze the air from the canopy,
Yeah.
it helps to hold slider up.
Yeah, it helps it locks the slider, but then when you start putting it in the bag, if the tail only comes off a little bit like that, then that benefit is gone. There are other tricks to keep the slider in place. I come to that when I start bagging the canopy. It only holds the slider in place when you put the canopy down. But even if I only do one roll or no roll, if I just keep tension on the tail here, you see it keeps the slider in place and there's no roll at all. And it still keeps the slider in place.
Do you line up the slider with the nose, or how do you exactly place it?
I just quarter it. So I don't pull it out, I don't fold it open, I just quarter it. Obviously it's exposed in the center, but that's just where it is, nothing special. Cool. More questions so far? No?
It's not some slider like on the Vevo, Valkyrie.
Yeah, we have some canopies where there are the little buttons on the slider. They just make sure that the slider stays exactly in the center. So when the canopy opens up, that slider is presented really symmetrical in the center of the canopy. Cool. Now everyone's favorite part: putting the canopy in the bag. Cool. A lot of people they have problems, especially when it's a new canopy, to get the canopy neatly in the bag. You see them. Obviously, I try to get a little bit of the air out, but it's no use of kind of endlessly putting that air out, because if I let go, my canopy kind of sucks up a little bit air again anyway. So my tips and tricks for bagging the canopy is do as many small steps as possible in order to make it a not too bad of a process. I always compare it with eating a steak. It's a bit of a weird comparison, but if you got a big steak and you think you want to finish it fast, you take big chunks, and actually you have to chew a lot, and it's not very tasty, and it takes a long time. Where you take small pieces, it's tasty, it doesn't take a lot of time, and it's way more enjoyable. Cool. Right?
So you're talking about enjoying things.
Cool. So obviously there are various ways putting the canopy into the bag. I always start with the small asphalt first. Main reason for that is in that case I'm always in control of my slider. And again, I already mentioned it a couple of times. The slider is the only device which controls my opening. So if I'm in control of the slider throughout the whole pack job, I know the slider will be there where it needs to be. So I make my small asphalt, put my knee on there, so it cannot go anywhere. Then I use my arm, not only to get some extra air out of the canopy, but I can instantly make the second asphalt. And I hear a lot of people saying like, oh, I do the big asphalt first because otherwise my small asphalt kind of sneaks out of there. Well, there's a little trick for that. If you put your big asphalt not on top of the small one, but just a little bit over it, so it hangs over the small asphalt, it just holds the small asphalt in place. Cool. So I start with one side, I leave the other side for what it is, because otherwise, you know, you're struggling with keeping everything neat, and you lose a lot of time and energy unnecessary. I pull the corner of the bag around my first side, get the closing flap underneath, put my knee on there, got both hands available again for the other side. Then pull the closing flap underneath, and then just pull the bag around the canopy and stuff the canopy in here. And there you go. It's a canopy with about, well, it's less than 100 jumps for sure, and no struggle at all. Cool. Of course, the canopy is not completely in the bag, but at least it stays there. I can grab a bite of lunch, and it will be still like this when I come back.
Are you hungry, Hans?
I am. Any question? Yes.
You don't have a kill line on this canopy?
I have, yeah. I already got the barbecue. That's all right.
And I saw a lot of people, I don't know how you say, arm the kill line after the canopy is in the back.
Yeah, I like to do it before it because the bridle kind of cramps up, and I don't want to have any fabric in between there.
What do you think about folding the canopy?
What do you mean? Like cycle packing?
No. When I have it like a cone on the floor,
Yeah.
I always push the air and then I fold it underneath.
Folding is alright as long as you not kind of roll it in,
Yeah.
because then you can catch some lines. But if you want to have a neat fold, yeah, nothing wrong with that, of course.
Is there anything wrong with putting it in like two parts? Like first put like one end in,
Yeah.
and then like roll like the top part in.
What do you mean? Show me. Yeah. Sure. There we go.
Like,
Show me what you got.
like you get this first part in. And then you deal with the top.
Yeah, you can do that. The only thing you have to be really aware of is that you don't displace the slider.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm holding that one there.
Okay, we'll finish it. I want to see it.
He is a cameraman.
Can I
Yeah, but what, you already see it now. So you see the slide moment here?
Yeah. Because like I usually have it like I keep rolling.
Yeah.
I usually have it like tight, so
Yeah.
then I can just grab it and put it in.
Yeah. But if you want to kind of have the benefits of not rolling the tail, then it's
Okay.
the thing is, the position of the slider is so important, and that's why I do it the other way around, because I just want to be in control of the slider throughout the whole patio. But whatever works, just make sure if you do it this way that you physically push the slider grommets to the slider stop when you do that the second asphalt. So you're 100% sure they didn't display. Okay. Cool.
You always do 2 asphalts, or no matter the canopy size?
Yeah, I always do 2 asphalts. I must say on the real small canopies, it doesn't add a lot. It's just a habit. It's hard to teach an old dog a new trick. So, but on smaller canopies, if you just do one asphalt, it's all good. Cool. Get another demonstration.
Leg it over there.
Ollie, smile.
Well, how neat is that?
That's pretty neat.
Pretty neat. Cool.
I have another question.
Yeah.
When you put your knees on the canopy before it's in the bag,
Yeah.
some people say not to put all the weight on it,
Yeah.
but I think you are putting the weight on it.
No, it's not putting my full weight in. It's a bit of balancing. It's not my full weight. Cool. Now let's talk about my second favorite topic, which is keep calm and double stow. Yes. That's another myth when it comes to packing, that some people tell other people that when you double stow through the grommets you get backlogs. Who heard that? Yeah, well that's obviously not true. All my 70 demo canopies are double stowed through the grommets, and so far I didn't have a backlog.
I'm gonna add one thing.
Yes.
From personal experience, it does, if it's a wingsuit, it's a big wingsuit, and they flare like so ridiculously powerful that their extraction is not as strong enough.
But that has more to do with your pilot chute than with double stowing, though.
Yeah, but it actually locked the bag.
Well, I didn't have enough force to pull it out of the bag, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's for sure. That's a pilot chute problem. It's not the double stowing that caused the backlog.
Yeah, it's just a very slow extraction because wingsuit flare.
Yeah.
And get out to the pitch. They say sometimes they feel even the bag between their feet.
For base, you're
Yeah.
using also bigger pilot chutes.
Sorry?
For base, you're also using bigger pilot chutes because of less speed.
Well, we will come to pilot chutes in a little bit. There are various reasons why we preach double stowing. Main reason is obviously safety. Does everyone know what an out of sequence deployment is? It's alright if you don't know it, but I will just explain it anyway. So an out of sequence deployment means that during your deployment, one of the stows comes off before it's time for the stow to come off, and it's probably the dangerous thing which can happen on deployment. If you have an out of sequence deployment, it means there's no tension on the lines when the canopy comes out of the bag. That means when the canopy comes out of the bag, your slider doesn't come down a little bit, but really drop down a lot, which gives you like an instant opening. It's not only very bad for your gear, but more importantly, it's very bad for your body. There are even known fatalities because of out-of-sequence deployments. So it's a very, very scary thing. Who uses tube stoves, by the way? Okay, we come to that as well. But please stop using them. We will come to that as well.
Don't use it.
Yep.
You might be double search for a long time on
Yeah.
the device of PD. So the last two canopies that bought from PD,
Yeah.
when they supply the canopy, the little bag it comes with.
It goes with the small rubber bands, right? That's because a lot of people are too lazy to double stow. So we definitely advise double stowing with large rubber bands because most people don't do it. Then at least it gives them some tension on the stow when they single stow. That's the whole reason.
It's quite the same as the
Yeah, no, but most people don't read the manual or watch a video, and then you can imagine if you have really thin lines. Sometimes if I open up a container when I swap a demo canopy or I get a demo canopy back, it's like you see just lines almost falling out of the stove. So that's why we provide the small rubber bands to make sure that doesn't happen when they first use the canopy. And hopefully then they read the manual and then they change them for large rubber bands. Cool. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about the safety benefits of double stowing.
One question between how many, how long is the stove line out of the rubber band?
I kind of use like about 3 fingers,
Okay.
pretty much. Yeah. Don't make them super big, but definitely don't make them too small.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, you can ask them more questions.
I used to have carved openings on my old canopy.
Yeah.
And one of the factors suggested like to leave a little bit more lines, so probably like 1.5 of what you have right now. And it stopped actually, like it did help me. But other people when they see that I'm really like too much lines, like at their point of view they say, oh, this is like too bad. Like what do you think about that?
I never heard that leaving longer slack will give you softer openings.
Because the explanation was that because it was like too short.
Yeah.
Actually, it wasn't enough time for my backlight to go out, so it would start like to rotate.
Yeah, that's enough. If you have not enough slack, you increase the chance of line twist. But I will come to that bit a little bit later when I put the canopy in or the back into the container. Cool. So when a bag gets being pulled out of the container, the canopy wants to stay behind. That's just physics, right? The canopy is loose in the bag, so the party chutes want to kind of pull the bag from the canopy. Well, the closing flap prevents that, but the weight of the canopy times it's deceleration, but you can also call it acceleration because it's relative to your free fall speed, obviously. With that force, the canopy will push at your closing flap. Does that make sense? Yep. Yeah, cool. So if you have really tight line stows like this, you can imagine if that closing flap is being pushed out by the canopy, there's not enough line length. So actually the closing flap starts pulling at your lines. Does that still make sense? Does everybody follow me? Yeah, cool. So what happens? So that closing flap starts pushing on that pulling at the lines. Well, if you would use small rubber bands and single stow them, or you use tube stows or whatever, you can imagine if it's being pushed out far enough, it can slide out of your rubber band, and this is an out-of-sequence deployment. So when you double stow those, no matter how far that closing flap is pushing at your lines, there will always be a full stow around the lines, keeping those lines together. So that's the safety reason why we want you to double stow. Then there are other benefits with double stowing. One of them is it takes way more energy to unstow the double stows than to unstow the single stows. So all that energy which is already absorbed by the unstowing process is energy what doesn't need to be absorbed during the opening of your canopy. So you will get softer, smoother openings. And another important thing, it gives you way more tension on your lines. And on your very first packing lesson, they said when you started packing, it's very important to have a lot of tension on your lines. Well, that's not so much for the packing process, obviously, but that's for the unpacking process. There you want to have tension on your lines to give you consistent openings and less chance of malfunctions. So having those proper line stows gives me a lot of tension on my lines during my deployment, which gives more consistent openings and less chance of malfunction.
How does this fit to semi-stowless pumps?
Very good. My third favorite topic. I always say to people, get the right tools for the job. So if you do wingsuiting or you do a lot of sub-terminal deployments, there's definitely a benefit in a semi-stowless bag because there's no pull at the bag during the unstowing, so the bag stays way more in place. But on a normal free fall jump, on a terminal deployment, the movement of the bag is nothing more than this. It's like it goes so quickly. It's like this and that's all. So but people say, oh, but the bag is going everywhere. No, it doesn't. It does this and that's all what's happening. So I see there are more benefits of having stows, more tension on the lines, less energy in your opening, then maybe a little bit movement of my bag. If you use a semi-stowless bag, definitely double stow your locking stows, because those locking stows, whether there are 2 or 3, those are the only moments where you can get a little bit tension on your lines. The rest is pretty much controlled line dump. So and it works. I mean, modern canopies they are very forgiving. So it works. But if you ask me what do you prefer, I will always go for line stows, because the benefits of that for me are more important than a little bit quicker packing or a little bit less movement of my bag during opening. Another thing, some people use full stowless bag with the magnets. Those are, I would say, not the most safe. That's not the safest configuration you can get. Be very careful with that. With very light canopies, I would say the magnets are strong enough that the bag doesn't open up on.
So, okay, you guys, the weather looks like it's gonna be better in a short while.
Hey, we heard that before.
Please, you have about 20 minutes or so. Please get your gear ready.
Cool. So back to the magnet bags. You should be very careful with those. Actually, I would say don't use them. But the thing is, you can imagine that there's a certain canopy size which might be too heavy for the magnets to stay in place. You can imagine if you replace your party chute and you don't think about it, you think, oh, I get a zero porosity party chute this time instead of my F111 party chute, and it might be maybe it's a little bit of a big party chute for your bag. You can imagine the extra snatch force will just open up those magnets. That's a very dangerous thing. And what magnets do, when they open up, they will always find each other again. I mean, that's the whole purpose of the magnets fight. Well, you can imagine if that happens and there's some top skin of your canopy between those magnets. Obviously, when the canopy inflates, the top skin will be pulled out, but it will damage your canopy. And another thing is, the people who use it on the very small canopies, they add a lot of weight and drag at the canopy. So we all want to have a small, fast-flying, steep-flying canopy, and suddenly I put like a big anchor on it. So all those things, I think, don't weigh up because then you just don't have to use rubber bands. The tube stow thing, I almost forgot about that. So tube stows, luckily we see them less and less and less. The only reason you use tube stows right is because they last long, I guess. Yeah, because otherwise why would spend all that money on something with... the thing with a tube stow is a tube stow has a round shape. So the round shape, and if these are my lines, the round shape already has a very, very small contact area on my lines. They have a round shape, so they're really easy to roll off your lines. So they don't have the grip like the square rubber band on your lines. And they last very long, but they stretch out. You know, so that little contact area which there is with some tension, that tension gets less and less and less over time, not giving you the proper tension you want on your line stows. You can tighten them up, a tube stow, but that takes 10 times longer than replacing all your rubber bands anyway, so then you kind of lose that advantage. So, yeah, I don't like tube stows at all, just because they don't provide the tension on the lines you want to have. Any questions about stowing? Yes?
Again, what the out of sequence deployment leads to? What it leads to?
An out of sequence deployment, that means so there's no tension on my line. So, so this stow came off before it needed to come off. So now all the other stows come off, and that means that when the canopy comes out of the bag, there's no tension on your lines. It's just like a little bit slacky, which means your slider will drop down a lot. Will give you an opening so hard because you kind of don't have a slider. Yeah, but so hard that you will injure yourself or even worse. There are cases that they found someone and some organs were ripped off inside the body because of the opening force.
What do you think about lazy bags?
What?
Lazy bags.
Yeah, I was just talking about the lazy bags with the magnets, right?
You say with magnets, but there are without magnets with flaps that just.
But it's for me if you cannot I mean there is those flaps need to come off as well, right?
Yeah.
So are they being pulled open by the lines, or what's the? I need to see an example to explain whether. Semi-stowers. So with only like only two locking stows, you mean? Yeah. So we had a little chat about that. That for some disciplines it has an advantage, mainly subterminal deployments. But for normal free fall use, I see more benefits with having line stows. One other thing, which is very important to keep an eye on, is actually the condition of your rubber bands. We've all been there, we're packing, we see that rubber band with cracks and holes and whatever, and we really carefully make that line stow, so we hope that at least it lasts one more jump, right? We've all done that, right? I've done it, you know? But now if you think about it, about the danger, what can happen if it can happen when you roll the bag into the container. It can happen when the bag is being pulled out of the container, that the rubber band will snap. That will create an out-of-sequence deployment as well. So you know when you see that rubber band with all those cracks, that next jump you need to replace it anyway, because you know it's already on the end of life. So please do it before you jump and not after you jump. Okay? So. Any more questions so far? Cool. Then we go to the last bit. Obviously, I always get the question how much slack you need to leave. Oh, you hear myself, right? Brilliant. Cool. So you want to leave enough slack that when your bag leaves your container, it also leaves your burr ball before there's the first pull on the line. So that is enough slack. So. Obviously, when in doubt, when you think, oh, it's on the edge, just undo that last stow, because of otherwise you might end up in line twist, because if the bag is still half in the burble and there's a pull, then the bag leaves the burble uneven and it's like a propeller, and you just will end up with severe line twists. But definitely. Don't free stow all your lines on the bottom of your container or in your container. If you do that, then get a semi-stowless bag. But like I said, use the advantages of proper line stows. Actually, we have a kind of a measuring thing. Your line stow should be strong enough to slowly lift your bag from the ground, and they shouldn't come off. So you can check that on your next pack job, right? If that's the case, there's enough tension on your line stow.
It's not bad if there's more tension, right?
It's not better if there's more tension. No, no less. No less.
What can happen if you leave like too much lines?
Well, it's like you. If you look, then there's just like that first bit. There's no tension on the lines at all in that first bit of your deployment. So it means less tension on your lines, more energy left to be absorbed by your opening. So that's and it's really hard to do it really neat, so it doesn't get all messy in your container anyway. Probably takes more time than a couple of lines does. Cool. More questions? No? Then there's one last little thing I wanna, actually two little things I wanna talk about. I get a lot of questions whether you should or you shouldn't rotate the bag in the container. Well, if you read the manual of your container, I'm pretty sure all manuals say you should rotate the bag so your lines end up on the bottom of the container. So that's for once. That's it. Your container manufacturers tells you to do it in order to use the container correctly. It also has a few other benefits. One of them is it doesn't wear your deployment bag out that easily. I'm going to show you what I mean. Find the closing loop. Cool. So when my bag is nicely rotated in the container, now if the pin gets pulled out of the loop and you have that first snatch on your bag, right? Because that your bridle is under a 90-degree angle, that first snatch is being absorbed by your grommet and the reinforcement webbing in your bag. So that first snatch will also cause the bag to turn upright, and then you got back extraction. So a little bit more energy is absorbed, but more important, if your D-bag, if your grommet and your webbing absorbs this little thing, there's not a lot of energy to be absorbed by your bag. If you don't do it, then you can see if I pull on the bridle, you see the fabric needs to absorb that energy. So if you see a D-bag with a lot of wrinkles, it means it hasn't been rotated, and every time the fibers of the fabric gets all the force, and they stretch and they break and they just wear out your bag a little bit quicker as well. So. And then the last thing is just check with your own gear what kind of configuration you have with the combination of the pilot chute and the type of handle you use. We have two different fabrics for pilot chutes. We've got the F111 and the zero porosity pilot chutes. Zero porosity pilot chutes, obviously they catch the air quicker, which gives you a bit of more snatch force. So that's why zero porosity pilot chutes in general are way smaller than F111. But the 0P is also very slippery. So if you have a high drag handle, and the most high drag handle is the Hacky, the leather ball, and you don't have like the counter tab to keep it in place, it's not an ideal situation. But you can imagine my high drag handle, if that catches air when I climb out the plane or when I make some transition, and my 0P pilot chute is really slippery, it could cause enough to get the pilot chute a little bit out, and then the ball is more out of your burble and starts moving around and pulls your pilot chute out, which could cause a premature deployment. So just rethink what kind of handle and what kind of pilot chute you have to just be aware of the potential danger. If you have a free fly handle or a Hacky with a counter tuck tab or another low drag handle, the 0P is less of a problem. But if you have a Hacky and a zero porosity pilot chute, yeah, I would consider modify it or change it. Any more questions?
You prefer which one for pilots?
I prefer F111 pilot chutes. They give a little bit less initial snatch force. They are a little bit more stable in the air. Zero porosity pilot chutes can dance around a little bit more. So especially with small canopies, I like a more stable pilot chute to get my bag out, and I like it that it's not as slippery. So there's more. My pouch has a better grip on that pilot chute. So to minimize the chance of premature deployment.
What do you think about a sky snatch?
I heard good things about it. I never used one, so I cannot talk out of experience. But a lot of wingsuiters they like it, so must be something good with it, right? Cool. Any more questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Most of the times when I had line twist,
Yeah.
I already noticed during the opening that the rises already came out like
Yes.
crossed over behind my head. What could have caused that?
Point position.
Well, if you feel your bag is going out and you feel instantly the line twist, that could. So it might be not enough slack on the lines. It might be that the bag got stuck at one side of the container a little bit. So it can be various reasons.
Because then I stopped like to rotate the bag into it.
Yeah.
Because I thought that on this rotation it got a little. That was my idea, but.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's hard to say. So much stuff happens. It's hard to say what the cause of your line twist was. Obviously, I must say I had that. Obviously, we all had that. Like you feel, but you always expect the same, and then sometimes it happens. So it can be body position. Most of the time, it's just that the burble kind of make your back exit a little bit unclean. More questions, please.
Pilot chute size always fit to the thing you want to do. For example,
Yeah.
wingsuit. Do you recommend just a bigger pilot chute, or is there any
Longer bridle as well, so it clears the burble of your wingsuit. Yeah.
But the pilot chute itself should be able to create the force it needs to.
Yeah. And don't underestimate the power of a proper pilot chute. If you get sketchy openings, check the condition of your pilot chute. You'll be surprised if you replace your pilot chute by a new one, how much cleaner and how much more consistent your openings will be. So that's also a bit of maintenance, but a lot of people, they don't think about it. They only replace the kill line when it gets too short. But I would say if you feel your pilot chute is wearing out, just replace it, because your openings will improve a lot by a proper pilot chute.
Also, the other way around, so the pilot chute shouldn't be too big.
Shouldn't be too big, no. Could cause hard openings. If there's too much pull, the canopy gets a little bit deformed, and then you can get sketchy openings as well. Yeah. So most manufacturers, rig manufacturers on their website, it says for what size canopy, what size pilot chute you should use.
Okay.
Cool. More questions?
I got one.
Thanks everyone. Oh, you got one, yeah.
What is the best way to install the excess of steering lines into the keepers, from the top or from the bottom?
Good question. I don't know. With some risers, if you first use a top one, it can become really thick, so it can be hard for the slider to pull your slider over your steering toggles. So then it's better to skip that one and go to the bottom one. But it all has to do with your. I don't think there's like one special way to do it.
The top is more reliable, it keeps good.
Just make sure you make your excess, you fold wide enough that it stays in the keeper.
I actually asked the same question to my rigger, and his answer was, once you install the toggles, the tension the canopy creates on it pulls the slack upwards. So if you pull the slack from the upside, it easily goes on the full length. But if you fasten the slack from the bottom, this tension canopy created after installing. Try to rip off
the slide keepers. The line keepers.
Slack keepers.
Slack keepers,
and
yeah.
Pull them, rip them off. So
Yeah, I mean, personally, I don't use them, so it's. I do all my demo canopies though. No, but yeah, just what. Yeah, if it works that way, better do it that way. I cannot say you have to do it this or that way. I don't have experience with that.
Now the question I already asked you, maybe there's some other useful for the bridle to pass above
the briding routing, you mean?
From top to bottom or from bottom to bottom?
That's also your depends what container you use. Like UPT, they changed it from the top now to the bottom. Every container has their manual which states how you should route the bridle. Doesn't mean another bridle routing doesn't work, but I always say stick to the manual of your container manufacturer.
But there was an alternative bridle routing in the Skydive Mac, like I think for UPT rigs, to put the pin under the upper flap.
Yeah.
Below the upper.
Below the upper.
Yeah, I know what you mean. The Ryan way.
Yeah.
Some people skydive on a certain level. They need that increased safety because they are used as a target in free fall, or they formation skydiving really close that closing flaps touch each other and stuff like that. I only when you're comfortable with it, doing it that way, and you know also the danger. You can easily pack yourself a pilot chute in tow. So unless you're totally sure with what you're doing, then do it. But I wouldn't recommend it because the rig manufacturer, the Vector, doesn't recommend it. So cool. More questions? Well, thank you guys.